the honorable lecturer, adjudicators, debaters, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the final round of the second year of PKM English Debating Championship 2021. With the motion, this House prioritize armed support to Palestine rather than humanitarian aid. So, before we come to the debate, I would like to congratulate to the 4 teams for making it this far, and they are, on my right side, acting as the government. The first one is opening government. They are from Uin Ar-Raniry, Aceh. For the first speaker as the Prime Minister is Nadia Turahmi. The second speaker of opening government as the Deputy Prime Minister, Aina Khairunisa. And for the closing government, they are from Yai Anchuru, and acting as member of government, Rahayu Astari, and the government is Andri Pakli. And on my left side, there are opposition here, and as the leader of opposition in opening position is Shifa Khairunisa, and the deputy leader of opposition, Septi Ekaputi.
So really, ladies and gentlemen, our mission now is this house prioritize armed support to Palestine rather than humanitarian aid. Well, before that, I would like to give you the definition of this motion. For the first one is armed support. The definition of armed support is we as the word that we should support an armed side is look like the bomb, radar, gun, and etc. Ladies and gentlemen, and definition of humanitarian aid, that means is the word support in Palestine by giving humanitarian. It sounds like food, home, medicine, and other. Ladies and gentlemen, but before that, before we begin our debate, let me tell you first the history of this what we debate today, ladies and gentlemen. So the history what we debate today is actually because of let me tell you the history of this debate. For the firstly, there are the Palestine sit and their line, and at that time, the Adolf Hitler, that the leader of Nazi, that get off the Jews from Europe land, then all the Jews from Europe land that come to Palestine, come to Arabic land. So at the time, all Arabic land that refuse them, that do not take the Jews, and at the time only Palestine that who had stepped there. So at the time, the Jews that stay in Palestine line, ladies and gentlemen. Though what actually happened now, ladies and gentlemen, what actually happened now is the Jews is fight with Palestine to snatch the land. Let's see the history. That's Palestine line, and at the end that the Jews fight with the Palestinians to snatch the land, ladies and gentlemen. But nowadays, what actually happened is all the world helped Jews, and no one voiced out the Palestine. Just only Turkey that who voiced out the Palestine in United Nation meeting, and also the Turkey is do not support in arm. The Turkey is just voiced out the freedom of Palestine, but the Turkey only one country that who voiced out the Palestine should be free, but do not support from armed support, ladies and gentlemen. So here, ladies and gentlemen, because of no one country that support Palestine with armed support, the word that only support Jews, and the word that who really support the Jews is sounds like USA, British, Australia, UK, and Canada, and a lot of countries that support the Jews without regardless the Palestine, ladies and gentlemen. And why this happened? This happened, of course, is because of the agreement, because Jews with the other country, and that means the Jews that have a special relation that with the other country. So that's why when they want to fight the land, of course they need other requirement from the other countries. So that means the Jews that have a strong weapon here because they have a relation among the country, ladies and gentlemen. And then, what actually happened with the Palestine? With no one care with the Palestine. Yeah, I know that you want to say that all countries that also understand what actually happened is Palestine. Yeah, all countries that have actually care with the Palestine, but what actually they care is just only for food, just only for medicine, just only for home building and anything else, ladies and gentlemen. But here, what we want is all the world that support to armed support, rather than they support in humanitarian aid, ladies and gentlemen. Why? I know this. Let me explain this what actually happened now between Israel and Palestine, ladies and gentlemen. So for the first one, in Israel, that they have the government and also other country, and also they have a conflict gun. The conflict gun, what they have is actually, we can see that like a bomb, riddle, and also ethnic cleansing. This is a point, ethnic cleansing, and also genocide to Palestine. Whether in Palestine, they just only have Hamas, which means that Hamas is only the people who stand to the Palestine, who stand with the Palestine, and that Palestine people to fight out their freedom. But actually, what they fight out to freedom is they just only have homemade weapon, homemade rudal, and stuff. Of course, this is the unfair in the world because one country that have a complete weapon and one country just only have a homemade weapon, ladies and gentlemen, and one country they have another support from another country and one is not. I know this, what actually happened is we can see in United Nations that we can see a lot of countries that contribute in there, but no one who voice out the Palestinian and most is supporting its arm, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why from humanitarian aid, I know the big question is why they do humanitarian aid. Why they do the humanitarian aid for Palestine? It happened because they less armed support, ladies and gentlemen. So we can what we want in this from opening government is if we from the world that united. Yeah, I know that the problem is why we just support to humanitarian aid like food, medicine, and anything else, and also water, because it also it's easy to find, ladies and gentlemen, and also all country can do that. But if we support in armed support, of course that not all country can do that, because why? Like Indonesia also like in armed support. How can we gonna support other country, ladies and gentlemen? But here we believe that if all country, not all country, only 5 country or other country or some country that unite and provide the money to fight the Jews, and we support the Palestine by giving them the armed support, like we provide them the rudal or we provide them the gun, we provide the Palestine all gun that what they need. Of course that the Palestine will be free, and also the Palestine that will be win, ladies and gentlemen. And what happened if Palestine will be win? Of course that we do not need the food, the medicine, and anything else, ladies and gentlemen. So, of course, what we believe here as the first thing that we have to clear what actually happened here. The problem here is because the war, and the war happened is because a landing fight, and another sector, ladies and gentlemen. And here, ladies and gentlemen, the problem is providing only humanitarian because less income of the country, they lack it all, ladies and gentlemen. And here, like what I said before, if we do not need to provide humanitarian aid if we provide them the armed. If we provide them the armed support, because humanitarian aid that they really need it because of the lack of armed support, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe that if some country that unite and can support the Palestine, I'm sure that the Palestinians will be free and no war and other things. We from opening government that we believe that support mission. Thank you.
Thank you for the Prime Minister. You spent 7 minutes 42 seconds. We have heard from Prime Minister. Now to open the case from the opposition and counter the argument from the government, I shall now invite the leader of the opposition. Please welcome Shifa Khairunisa. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shifa from the opening opposition side that I would like to rebut first from the opening government about, she said about many countries, Turkey and some countries didn't support the arms to Palestine because Jews has a something like the other countries has the arm support to only to Jews in Jewish country. It's like an Israel country. So in here, I think that you didn't watch any news or something is like on social media that it happened just days or the months back that the Palestinians also has orders to attack back the Israel because they already have arms to attack the colonized in Palestine. And in here, yes, all of us that we know that Palestine has been war with Israel for many years back, and it doesn't end yet. Yes, we already know that, and so many victims or civilians are died or in hunger or they are dying because they don't get any enough humanitarian aid for the Palestinian country. And also there are some of the other problems, for example, is not like humanitarian aid, but also humanitarian problems is like girls got raped from the Zionists and so on and so forth. And if why we are still prioritizing the humanitarian aid is, see, they are still in war situations. They don't end the war yet. So it is if we are talking about the humanitarian aid, of course we are talking about food, about clothes, about the house building, and why we should prioritize this humanitarian aid support rather than the arms support is, the first one is if we support the arms to the Palestine, and you know that the arms, not all of the people, not all of the civilians can use the arms. It's such as a shoulder or something like that, not all the people. And you can see on the social media or the television, there are so many teenagers and the kids under 10 years or under 18 years, they are trying to complain, they are trying to attack the army from the Israel. They are using the arms, no thanks. And of course they are not ready yet for that. And this is not the best way. We should prioritize the arms for the Palestinians. So yeah. And of course the second one is about the stability or the good mental health for someone. If the Palestinian doesn't get any enough the humanitarian aid rather than the armed support for them, of course they don't get any food. It's like enough to food and good clothes, no thanks, and they are not ready yet for that. It means if we don't care about the humanitarian aid, it will be impacted of the another problems. And we can move on to the other countries that they don't face any war, but they are still in the danger or they are still in the starving or something like that because they don't get any good humanitarian aid. See, this is the big deal, or this is the biggest problem of some countries, not only for the Palestinians. They don't get any we can see is like good clothes or something like that, and they get it is like will be impacted of the disease, it will be impacted of the other problems. It is like if someone is don't get any enough humanitarian aid, it means they are like a mental illness or something like that.
Go ahead, please.
No thanks. And that's why from this case we are, as the opening opposition, we extremely support the humanitarian aid rather than the armed support. And why humanitarian is more important is we should support rather than the armed support, because see, if you feed someone, if you give them or the medicine or something like that, they can get attacked, the colonized or the Zionists or the army from the Israel with the good condition, with the health. This is more efficient. This is more the good before we give them, before we support them with the arms. Of course, we need a stable human for that. Not only the of course we need to give them the arms and something like that, but they are not ready for that. So I think that you didn't give us for the logical reasons why, because you didn't think about that. And also for the people who, if we are support the armed support rather than the humanitarian aid, of course they are. It is like they have a problem with their mental, because yes, it is still war and war, because they didn't get, and it's like they are really need that, but they get any what they are opposite with their needs in their daily life. And as we know that this is the biggest problem of this country, and we extremely need the humanitarian aid rather than the armed support, because we are really care of the people or the mental illness for the Palestinians, not only for the armed, not only for only war and war. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. For the leader of opposition, you have spent 7 minutes 30.
Nanti dia kan udah semangat tuh, udah sehat, baru nanti orang Palestina bisa attack
What happened in Palestine today is not a conflict between the two countries, but ethnic cleansing, settler colonialism, genocide, which has been perpetrated by Zionists for decades and has put Palestinians in an unjust, unfair position. Thus, we would prioritize armed support to Palestinians rather than humanitarian aid, ladies and gentlemen. Several rebuttals for the opening opposition team. Well, they do not clearly understand the motion, because what we are talking about here is prioritizing armed supports rather than humanitarian aid, but not to stop fully giving it so the kids won't die, so the civilian in Palestinian won't die in hunger. We will keep giving the civilians in Palestine the support, but we will give the priority to protect them from dying instead of hunger, ladies and gentlemen. Well, they have the burden to prove the urgency to prioritize armed support for Palestine, but they have failed to do so, because the main point that we got from their stand is that to prevent them from hunger. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you are in the middle of war, what do you want more? What will you prioritize more? To eat or to survive for the next day and to not die or to get bombed, ladies and gentlemen? So here comes our arguments. We stand on three main arguments here. First, the ineffectivity of humanitarian aid. Second, the erga omnes principle according to the Rome Statute and the Geneva Convention. And third is the unfairness in the armed support, ladies and gentlemen. First, the humanitarian aid, to depend solely on the humanitarian aid, is never and not an effective way to resolve the conflict, because the attacks from the Zionists will continue to happen given the current context that even after the ceasefire agreement, the Zionists do not even wait 24 hours to re-attack Al-Aqsa, ladies and gentlemen. And the supply of humanitarian aid will only be a repetitious circle that never ends because the attacks keep coming. This will be ineffective and has been proven ineffective after decades and not really giving to resolve the conflict, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot solely depend on the humanitarian aid because the Zionists, as the colonizer, won't stop themselves and before they get their purpose to fully settle on the land of Palestine, ladies and gentlemen. Second of all, regarding the erga omnes principle, diplomacy track is not sufficient, ladies and gentlemen. We have tried in the United Nations to resolve the conflict over time, but it keeps getting vetoed by the United States, ladies and gentlemen. This country is protected by the powerful country and no one can stand against them, ladies and gentlemen. And because once the war crimes is perpetrated, it becomes the erga omnes based on the Geneva Convention, which means the right of every single country to protect the colonized country, ladies and gentlemen. So let's see what's happened in Palestine to fulfill the element of crimes which make it justifiable to do the erga omnes, ladies and gentlemen. First, they kill the civilians, and not only ordinary civilians, but the kids and also women, ladies and gentlemen. Killing civilians per se is deemed prohibited under international humanitarian law, ladies and gentlemen, let alone killing the women and children who are protected persons under the international humanitarian law. And even more, they do it, as we can see, trace back to the moment from Najjar, Nasrah and Najjar, a medical staff is getting shot by the Zionists, ladies and gentlemen. Medical staff, herein we emphasize, is a very protected person under the international and humanitarian law. And moreover, another case, they also destroyed and keep trying to attack Al-Aqsa, while a mosque and its worship place is protected place in the Geneva Convention and the Rome Statute. I could go on, ladies and gentlemen, with this list, but this is already sufficient and has fulfilled the threshold and element of crimes under the Rome Statute that every country in the world have the right to intervene and should intervene because of the erga omnes principle, ladies and gentlemen, to protect the Palestinians from ethnic cleansing and genocide and other war crimes, ladies and gentlemen. Third of all, the unfairness in armed support. Another reason of this proposal is because, as stated by my first speaker, the Zionists has been accepting support from the powerful countries, not only United Nations, but also United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and every conflict resolution settlement made at the UN, as I have explained earlier, has been constantly vetoed by the US, which gives Israel even more power to destroy and colonize Palestine because they are protected by the superpower country, while herein, and on the other hand, there exists no armed support and for the country to help the Palestine to survive from the attack keeps coming from the Zionists, ladies and gentlemen. Thus, the armed support, Thus, the armed support, instead of solely humanitarian intervention, is highly needed and fully justifiable in order to save the Palestinians from ethnic cleansing, settler colonialism, genocide, and any other war crimes committed not only by Israel but also other state actors standing against them and protect them to do this condemned action, ladies and gentlemen. Moreover, we are going to emphasize here is that by prioritizing armed supports, we are not going to neglect the humanitarian aid for the Palestinians, ladies and gentlemen. We admit that humanitarian aid is important to keep them survive, but to keep them surviving from death, to protect them from being bombed, to protect them from being bombed while they are praying, ladies and gentlemen, is much more important, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that's why, from the opening government, we proudly proposed the motion to prioritize our supports in Palestine rather than the humanitarian aid. Thank you.
Thank you. From Deputy Prime Minister, you spent 7 minutes 18 seconds. Next, let's invite Deputy Leader of Opposition, Ms. Sapti Eka Putri, to give her speech. The floor is yours.
So we here in the opening opposition, we believe that we should prioritize the humanitarian aid rather than the armed support to Palestinians. Because the first one is under the status quo that is shown to us, Palestinians are under the colonies of Israel itself. So they are, as a fighter in their country, are needed the support both of the arms and the humanitarian aid. But we here in the opening opposition, we don't ban any armed support in this conflict. We are going to prioritize the humanitarian itself. The first one is I would like to give some rebuttal for the opening government. The first one is they are said that in Palestine there are still lack of the weapons, guns and something like that. But if we look at back, there are like a month ago the Palestinian has launched the Rudolph that it works to the Israel, the region of Israel itself. So we cannot say that the Palestinian still insufficient in having weapons and something like that. They still fight back the Israel more even though they are only have the local the weapon that comes from the local communities itself. Next is why the humanitarian aid itself should be prioritized, because we know that the humanitarian aid itself comes from the urgent needed from the human in Palestinian. We know that most of Palestinians has urgent things in there where they are day by day get die because the humanitarian aid itself doesn't fulfill. Sorry, I still have many explanation. And the second is, we can see in the reality that many communities are regularly open donate for those who are suffering in there because of why? Because the demand of the humanitarian aid itself doesn't end until whenever it is, because we know that the demand of humanitarian aid is always going higher day by day. And the second is, we know that if the Palestinians are under the attack of the Israel, they cannot get any food, medicine and something like that, because they cannot go to work, they cannot go to the hospital because the hospital is already broke, it's already under the attack of the Israel. So how they can get how can they stable as a human if they don't get any supports like humanitarian aid itself? And the second is, we believe that armed support is really important also, but we believe that armed support are the secondary urgent things because even though they have we know that Palestinians have the most sufficient and expensive. Armed supports are the secondary urgent things to consider because even though they have the most sufficient and expensive arms, it will lead to the conflicts of victims more and more. So, we believe that humanitarian aid such as medicine, food, homes, and so on is really important. Really, we should prioritize more rather than the armed support itself. So how can, if people are not support in not support more in the humanitarian aid, but they get more in armed support. How can people in hunger and how people in suffering condition can runs the weapon, can runs the rudolphs and something like that. So we here in the opening opposition, we want to make sure the individual needed and the humanitarian needed of the Palestinians are fulfilled, and also the social needed for them, so that they are ready to fight. So we are here not ban the armed support. We also need the all countries to give the armed support. So, but we more believe that the humanitarian aid itself should be prioritized. And the opening opposition believe that humanitarian needs are the most urgent things. It will lead to, if it's fulfilled, the humanitarian aid itself fulfilled, it not only lead to the stability of the human itself, but also in the country's business. Also, the opening government said before that they have mentioned about convention, international convention and something like that. We truly believe that we are not going to protest any convention, international convention here. We are really support any we believe that it is internal organization problems. So if another countries didn't or cannot get giving any armed support to the Palestinians, so we have to fix the roles. So we have to fix the problems in the bodies of organizations such as United Nations and something like that. So you cannot prioritize the armed supports more due to the internal conflicts in the United Nations even if in the problems, the internal problems of in the United Nations itself. So we here believe that we are going to so which one is you prefer? Which one you prefer? You get regularly humanitarian aid and use the sufficient weapons from the local communities in Palestine, or prioritize the arms and see people get and doesn't fulfill their personal needed and their social needed. And then we believe that we know that in the opening opposition we are not bad any kind of support. We are believe that the Palestinians really need the armed support also. But we here know that this day by day the victim of the conflict itself getting higher and higher. So we believe that we should guarantee the regular humanitarian aid. So we can see also that in our reality, the communities in Indonesia never and to open donate to the Palestinians. So if the opening government said that it's kind of problem in it's kind of the international problems that the country cannot give any armed support to the Palestinians, it should be discussed here today. So we believe that it is kind of internal problem in the United Nations itself. So you cannot prioritize the armed support itself. Thank you.
Deputy Leader of Opposition, you spend 7 minutes 27 seconds.
I'm Rahayu Astari, the member of closing government team. I would like to deliver my big thanks for all of the honorable adjudicators, the respectable all of debaters and also timekeepers. And also for all of the audience, thanks a lot for being here for today. Before I start our debate for today, I would like to mention our motion debate for today. If this House prioritize armed support to Palestine rather than humanitarian aid. Prioritize aid, armed support. Nowadays, Palestine become a victim of discrimination by Israel. Israel used their power of army to destroy and taking handle of Palestine. And armed support. We or as the majority of Islam country can help them with our armed power. We denote our weapons and our superpower army and support them with
our defense power, ladies and gentlemen. The problem that we find here is the fight between Palestine and Israel has never been ended until today, because the Palestinians have a very low power in their arms. They just use a second weapon that they found. Sometimes they steal it from the Israel. They just use traditional weapon, for example, from Balan and etc. Then we can see in the last war of Palestine and Israel, the Palestinians send their little ship with the Israel, just use traditional weapon and kill around 13 people of Israel. Then the Israel damaged them. The Israel sent back a biggest rudal to kill almost 100 people of Israel. How a phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen. We are, as the majority Muslim country, feels very sad about this phenomenon. We need to do our jihad in the right way. We need to help them because they are asked for help. We need to give our weapon. We need to give their super arms to them. Our Muslim family just discriminates and ask for help from us. Nowadays, we already send our help with humanitarian aid such as clothes, foods, water, ambulance, health staff, and etc. But the big question is, did the problem already solve? Did the war already stop because we are sending humanitarian aid? The problem, the war has never ended until today. The answer, of course, no, because the Palestinians always become a loser. They need arms to support them. Based on the interview with the people of Palestine in the BBC News, they say that just send your weapon if you don't dare to come in here. Just send everything in the armed support if you don't dare to come in here, because we need it. We can make it. We don't have authority to make it. We are become a loser day by day because of we are lack of armed support. So they need to end this problem. Make Israel stop discriminating them, which show their defense power, and make Israel appreciate them as the freedom country. Indonesia has a very popular problem: radicalism. Radicalism, the people of radicalism can make a weapon. The radicalism people believe that they are take care of Islam. They are help an Islam people, but they don't have a dialogue space with the government. They never been found a space for dialogue with the government, so they do the wrong jihad. Government can educate them. Our Indonesian country can educate them because they can make a gun, a bomb, and this kind of stuff that can help our Palestinian family. And then, if we are sent these people, it means that we are sent our armed support to the Palestine, and this is just the best way to solve all its problems. From this, we made a better choices to end the war between Palestine and Israel. As the Islam country, as the country who care with human rights, we need to collaborate each other to help Palestine with our arms. This can make Israel giving up because they stress it by a lot of arms power. I emphasize as the first speaker of closing government team, if the arms is the biggest power that can destroy enemy. Armed support can damage the authority of Israel. We do our best jihad. We serve our Muslim family. We solve the problem. And the point is, we stop the war. It means that we have built up the pieces in the world. And how about give the humanitarian aid? For example, we give money. A lot of students in Indonesia, in the university, also in the senior high school, they collect money to help our brother and sister in the Palestine. But who's gonna guarantee for it if our money come in their safety, come into Palestinian safety?
How if the money is stolen by the people who want to get advantage or benefits from this problem, since the issue already rose to the surface and become a heated conversation in our people? If the money not come into the real count to Palestine, they cannot buy the weapons, because this is the dangerous thing that need a permission and a lot of rules to get it. Of course, only one, the freedom country can achieve it, can make it, and can send it the armed support to the Palestine country. Food will be done, clothes will be broke, but armed support and the war solve every problem. Palestinian people will live in harmony and safe from every single fight for forever. So I'm Rahayu Astari as the closing government team. We are strongly support our motion for today if this House prioritize armed support to Palestine rather than humanitarian aid, because this can solve the problem, this can end the war. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm Rahayu Astari. I'm close. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the closing of government. You spent 7 minutes 6 seconds. Now we come to the member of opposition. We call Ms. Dwi Anna Sofia to give her speech, please.
Mr. Chair, the government claimed that they want to support the army system toward Palestinian people. But in this case, the government failed to prove to us how to do this kind of thing by supporting army people to the Palestinian. Because they only glorify the theory that hey, we can attack Palestinian and we can combat Palestinian. But they never explain how to do this kind of thing. So that's why this is the burden of proof of the government. That's why they will have to, what kind of mechanism that they want to do. Firstly, going to my first rebuttal. Mr. Chair, we concede that this is ethnic cleansing. This is the genocide, and we concede we have to support Palestinian people. But in this case, this is not the right time for our government to do so. Why? Because we do not have any capacity to do this kind of thing. Because we do not have any power to combat Palestinian people. So that's why, because this is not the right time for Indonesian government to do so. So we only, what we can do is supporting humanitarian aid, for example, like healthcare, food, and so on and so forth. Secondly, they claim that they want to combine all countries to combat Palestinian people. Mr. Chair, we think that every single country has different purpose in this thing. It is not easy to combine all the countries to have one purpose. Because firstly, we have a contract in bilateral relationship, which is UN, and we also have some kind of WTO and so on and so forth. We think when we combat Palestinian by those things, it's very hard for the government to do so. So that's why, because this is not the right time for Indonesian government to do so. So we think we will stick on the status quo, that we will prefer giving humanitarian aid rather than army support. Firstly, Mr. Chair, we think that I'm going to talk for two kind of things. Firstly, why we have to prioritize humanitarian aid rather than army support. Secondly, why we think that this is not the right time for Indonesian government to do this proposal. Firstly, why we think that we should prioritize humanitarian aid. We already concede that the government and opposition team, we concede that there is war in Palestinian people, and civilian people lost their home, they lost their education, they lost their hospital, education, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. We think if the government support humanitarian aid, for example like food, healthcare, and so on and so forth, we think that this kind of thing is more important. Why? Because this is the primary need that already people need, for example like food and healthcare and so on and so forth. Because we cannot see that children there cannot eat simply because in war, Mr. Chair, they only drink water and so on and so forth. We as Indonesian people, what we can do right now is helping them by humanitarian things. So that's why it's important for
humanitarian aid in this debate. If we stick on the government side of the house proposal, it means that we neglecting the idea that we also killing a lot of people there because they simply cannot eat or they do not have any medicine and so on and so forth. We consider that there is still medicine there, right? There is food also, but we think that this is not enough. So that's why we think that as government, we should prioritize humanitarian aid rather than army support. Secondly, we think that this is not the right time for government to do their proposal. Firstly, because Indonesia right now is a big country, Mr. J. We have a lot of problems. For example, like government problem, economy, and so on and so forth. Right now, Indonesia is facing such kind of Papua radicalism, such kind of OKK, OPM, and so on and so forth. We think that, for example, like in Makassar, where bombing, crush, and so on and so forth. We think what we have to do right now is facing this kind of problem first, rather than prioritize army support to Palestinian people, because we concede we have to help other people, but what we have to do is to help ourselves first rather than helping other people, right? And more than that, we as Indonesian people or Indonesian government, we think we do not have any power to do so. Why? Because firstly, we concede that US power weapon is more bigger than Indonesian weapon, Mr. J. So we think that if Indonesia trying to send our army support to go there, it is not easy like what government do, Mr. J. It's very hard for us. Why? Because we concede that at the first place, we hold in such kind of UN thing, for example, like global organizations. For example, they also concede that US also already give their veto to do not have any intervention toward Palestinian or also Israel persons. We say it's very hard for Indonesian government or all the country to send their army person to go there. Why? Because firstly, it means that we against UN, Mr. J. What will happen if we against UN, Mr. J? Maybe USA, maybe it will harming our Indonesian people. For example, like maybe we can get revoked for UN itself, and we will get punishment. For example, like we can export and do export and so on and so forth. This kind of thing will happen if we against United Nations, because we send our army support to go Palestinian. Mr. J, we think that the stability of Indonesian government should be prioritized, and also we also concede that we have to prioritize humanitarian aid at the first place. But we think that because of this thing is not the right place of the government. So what we can do is helping Palestinian people by using what we can do. What is that? It's first humanitarian aid, such kind of welfare, food, healthcare, medicine, and so on and so forth. We think because of Indonesians do not have any capacity to do their proposal, we think that we as opposition, we will stick on the status quo, that we will not prioritize army support to Palestinian rather than humanitarian aid. Mr. Chair, we concede we should help other people, but what we want is that we help ourselves first, so we can do anything that may be important for other people. Thank you.